Good evening, everybody. I'm Zoe Elton, Director of Programming for Mill Valley Film Festival, and I am so happy to welcome you here. Big shout out to our members. We are so grateful to have this wonderful community of people who continue to support film and storytelling, and here we are with a great film and a great story. Also wanted just to thank Danielle Freiberg at IFC, IFC for having the vision to pick up Babyteeth, which is such a great film. They have great taste. And Danielle, who is actually sheltering in place in Mill Valley. So she's like a Mill Valley girl. It's so cool. Also, just a shout out to Rafael at Home. As you know, we reinvented the Rafael Film Center, and Rafael at Home is going gangbusters with tons of new films all the time. Tomorrow we've got The Runner, which was a great success at Docklands, our documentary film festival. There'll be a Q&A tomorrow night, and I think that Dan is going to put a link to that in the chat box or the Q&A box. I'm not sure. Anyway, the other bit of housekeeping, if you have a question for our guests, please put it in the Q&A box and we will get you everybody plugged in. And of course, let me make sure that I've got the Q&A running myself. Okay, so I am thrilled to be here tonight, all the way from Australia, where it's already tomorrow, I'm told. Shannon Murphy, director, and Eliza Scanlen, actor, and also a new string to her bow. She's also recently become a filmmaker and director, so there's that. But they are here tonight with their great film, Babyteeth. And first of all, to both of you, I'm so glad to have you here. It's so great to see a first feature, right, Shannon?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great to see a first feature that kind of comes out of the gate fully fledged, and it's just like artistically confident, really thoughtful. And I have to say that from the beginning of it, I just really felt like I could trust you, you know, and that I was willing to, you know, I was open to this journey that you were about to take us on. And it's just wonderful work. So thank you so much.
Thanks, that's really kind.
And we were talking a little bit right now about what it's been like in Australia as you shelter in place. And you know, what is it like there right now? How are you still under lockdown, or what's your status?
Our borders are still closed for a lot of the different states, so we can't easily travel between states, and we're not supposed to travel really long distances. So there's still quite a few restrictions. Things have eased up, but I have to say, like, I'm living with my parents at the moment. So for those of us that are living with people that are in the more vulnerable age bracket, I think a lot of us are still being really cautious.
Yeah, same for you, Eliza?
Yeah, I was in New York when it all kind of came crashing down, and I flew home, and I've been here with my family for a few months now. But the restrictions are easing, and I've been able to see friends and family, but again, yeah, it's definitely not back to normal quite yet, but it's no way.
I was wondering what it's been like for you as artists during this time, and whether just, you know, the remote thing has meant that you've been able to work in any way, or create or ponder, or, you know, what does that look like for you creatively?
I've been working a lot, actually, but I've been doing things that I haven't had the time to do over the last few years, which is to sort of give back to a lot of the educational institutions that supported me, or ones that I really admire. So I've been doing lots of, you know, talks for universities and drama schools, but then also a lot of writing rooms. So I don't write myself. I didn't write Babyteeth. Rita Carnier wrote it. And, but I'm really good at dropping lots of ideas into a room and then just walking away, and the poor writers have to either go with them or not. So I get hired quite a bit to come into writing rooms and feed in ideas. And so that's a very fun job to have at the moment. But then it's also a really nice time as a director to spend a lot of time reading a lot of material that's out there. So I am enjoying being able to do that at a more leisurely pace than normal.
Yeah, I mean, has it made any difference for either of you well, a couple of things, to the kind of films that you're just looking at right now, because like everyone is, like watching stuff. But secondly, has it made any difference to the kind of films and the kind of stories that you would like to make leaving from this place as we emerge from lockdown?
Totally. Like I tend to lean towards quite dark material. And in fact, Rita and I were talking about an upcoming project idea that we had been really excited about 6 months ago. And now we're like, we don't actually want to do that. It's too depressing.
Really?
Yeah. And we felt like it didn't have enough hope. And we weren't in that headspace anymore, actually. So I do think naturally now I do want to lean towards something potentially more comedic, or you do, as an artist, I think you respond to the times, and so you want to be offering something that's either a greater insight to what we've just experienced, or is allowing us to escape from it in an interesting way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Shannon. It's been a tough time to kind of give your emotional energy towards things that are very draining. And
yes, that is so true.
Yeah, and I just think that for me, the past 2 years I've been playing really heavy roles, and I've just come from 6 months of doing To Kill a Mockingbird, playing a white supremacist and someone who's just a really astounding example of what we're still facing today. And it was quite chilling to see what has been occurring on the news, and to notice how it still hasn't changed all these years later. So I think I'm the same, because I'm either looking for stuff that's just a little bit lighter, or stuff that reflects the times, and it's I'm to be honest, I'm just at a bit of a loss at what to do right now, and I'm just trying to make do and keep reading, keep watching films. Use this time to reset.
Yes, it is a reset time. Yeah. So let's talk about the film. And I mean, it's interesting, just sort of hearing you talk about the things that you're sort of thinking about watching and thinking about for your work, because Babyteeth has this amazing sort of balance between poignancy and heartfeltness and a certain kind of humor. And it played at Venice, it played at BFI last year. I mean, a lot of people now will be seeing it online. So I'd love to know what your sort of biggest takeaways were from witnessing it with a live audience. What things sort of worked? Was there anything that surprised you?
I think it's always interesting to work out where they laugh first, isn't it, Eliza?
Am I allowed to ask you where that might be?
It varies. That's what's interesting. It varies across every country. And actually we found, because I was in Palm Springs for the first time I got to watch it with an American audience. And I have to say they laughed the latest out of every other country we'd been to. And they still definitely laughed, but it came later. And I think something I'm noticing is that everyone settles into the tone once we hit that first dinner scene.
Right. Yes.
Which we kind of always knew, even in the making of it. But it's fascinating to sort of watch that sort of slight, oh, okay, this is what I think it is. But then the great thing about Rita's script is you can never quite settle. It always takes you somewhere you didn't expect. But yeah, Whereas sometimes in other countries, like even in the first scene, there can be some laughter. So it really depends.
The train station scene.
Yeah.
I mean, talk a little bit about making that. I mean, this is where they first meet. I mean, when I see that as the, you know, the starting point for the film, I think, wait a minute, how did they shoot that? You know, it's like, it's physical, there's a train, you know, that, you know, you end up on the, you know, talk about shooting it from both the acting and directing perspectives.
Well, we divided the day up into 2 sections, and it was basically what you're exactly talking about. The bit where Moses pulls her to the ground, that was the front half. And then we worked on the second half because, of course, also there was a train involved, and, you know, trains are very expensive. To get a platform is very difficult. And we had to do it on a weekend. And actually on the day we lost 2 hours because of complications with what the train people thought was happening. And anyway, disaster. But there was so much pressure, and I'm sure Eliza will remember this very clearly. That opening shot that is on her face, we were shooting that first moment of the film, and we knew we had 6 minutes to finish and then dive onto the next plane that was about to come on the platform opposite us, if we were to get the train sequence in the night out, which is a costume change, and they're supposed to be, you know, at night, but we go through a tunnel. And we knew we had 13 minutes from when we got on the train to complete that second part. And so when we were finally shooting that last bit with Eliza, you know, my AD and my producers were like, maybe you're going to have to forfeit that shot on the train for the night out. And I was like, I can't, it's really important. And we were just basically sort of yelling across the platform. I was like, you've got 2 minutes, you've got 1 minute. And then I was like, go. And Eliza just ran with all the crew, and we got onto the other train, and that she did a quick change and a wig change. And we always laugh because our hair and makeup artist was like high-fiving herself going, I just did a wing eyeliner on a moving train. And like, it was just chaos. And I'm like trying to yell direction, and Andy's like, get out of my shot. And it was just, yeah, it was mental. I have to say that was probably the most full-on shoot day we had. But Eliza, what's your perspective?
Oh my God, it was absolutely mental. I forgot that we did it out of order. How, like, does that happen that often, doing a scene out of order? I know that you do films out of order, but a scene itself is just.
Well, we sort of did it in order, but then we knew we were going to get that special shot on you.
Yeah. And we were just like, I think I stood there just like heavy breathing for about 6 minutes. Shannon was like, breathe heavier. And I was going a bit lightheaded by that point. Before we got onto the train, but yeah, there was so many moving parts with that scene as well. We had to have a stunt coordinator do Toby's harness, because it was a very small stunt, but it still required a mechanism to pull him back if something bad happened. So we had that too, and then the bloody nose was also something that we had to deal with, and also extras. So there were a lot of moving parts with this scene, and yeah, I guess by that point Toby and I were pretty close, so we kind of just we smashed the scene out, and it wasn't too hard in that way, I guess.
But what's unusual about that first scene is, you know, for Eliza, it's such a challenge because you only have about 1.5 minutes in the film where you get to see who Miller is before Moses explodes into her life. And so for her to channel all this history of who this person is and what her life is like and where she's at in that moment before we suddenly see her constantly in transition was a really big ask. But, you know, she did it.
It takes a lot of discipline to do that. I think people often feel, you know, that the craft of acting is, you know, about heart and that kind of thing. But the discipline is huge, especially with something like this.
Yeah, I think well, especially on this project, you the actors were very much a part of, you know, making certain scenes happen. Like, we were all working together to get it done. And on other films I've worked on, there's certain protocols that you have to follow, and it actually ends up wasting so much time when you could get it done so much quicker. But that was what was so wonderful about doing this film, is that the actors, as an actor, you didn't feel like a caged animal. You actually, your voice was important. And even in the rehearsal process, you know, we were working with Rita, and we were improvising lines with her, and we were allowed to take out a line if we didn't like it. And from the very beginning, Shannon assured us that she wanted to hear what we had to say about the film, and our opinion was really important. And to just have that before you even start the film just instills in you so much confidence for when you do get on set, and when you're a part of the chaos of it all. It's you feel, I don't really like getting chaperoned around, and I know a lot of actors don't like it, and you just didn't really get any of that on this film. And I think it's personally better that way, because there is no sort of subtle hierarchical treatment. It just felt very collaborative, and I really enjoy that kind of environment.
Well, that's a big shout out to you, Shannon, I think, you know, in terms of creating that kind of, right, yeah? It's great. Actually, so on the, just sort of riffing off the acting thing, there's, I mean, okay, how do I start this? Okay, a little context. Shannon, you're just directed Killing Eve. And Eliza, you also did Little Women last year. So I'm actually curious about whether there is something happening in the world of acting that is kind of shifting in the way that we work, you know, like for the small screen or for the big screen or live in a theater. So for instance, in your film, there's this beautiful moment when Miller looks out front. We see her looking actually out front. It's just the slightest moment, but there's an incredible sort of intimacy there. It's kind of wonderful. And it sort of breaks the fourth wall. And there are other moments when we see you, Eliza, where there are these sort of subtle, you know, eye things and face things. And I want to sort of also put that in the context, Shannon, of Killing Eve, because I feel that Jodie Comer has kind of shifted the way that we see the face in actors. I feel like she has muscles in every like little part of her face, and she does the slightest thing and you get like a whole sentence, a whole story, a whole subtext. So, you know, referencing what you guys were doing with this film, but also a general question, do you think there's a shift happening in the way that people are acting for the camera?
I do. I think it's I think those two actors, and also I'd say Sarah Snook is another actress that's similar in that sense. There's no vanity attached to their performance, and I think that's the big difference. So they're not consciously focusing on how they think they look in front of the camera. They are genuinely just immersed in the role, and they also know that you know, their face is very much their you know, the medium they have to express everything. So it's the ability to be fearless in the faces that they're pulling, but they're not even conscious of it. I think they're just truly in the moment, and they're not being held up by these ideas of what a woman should look like. It was funny, I was just watching, this is crazy, but my daughter, I was watching an old Shirley Temple movie with her last night, and I was watching the actresses in that, and there's just such stillness in the eyes, and it's all about just the still beauty. And I thought, gosh, we've moved so far away from that. Thank goodness, in a way, because it was sort of not, I think, not letting females be how they naturally are in real life and who they want to just be, which is expressive humans just like anyone else. So I think I think that's, I'd say, a big part of it, but Eliza, you might have a different opinion.
I agree, and I do think that acting has definitely changed, but also the roles that I'm seeing are changing, and we're seeing women more stripped back and irreverent and I guess more, you see women breaking the rules more, and I guess the word that stands out for me is irreverent, and Shannon really embraced that with this character. But I also think that I feel a lot of freedom in front of the camera, and it's also up to the cinematographer to kind of focalize and choose and make a choice. And I think Andy, our cinematographer, definitely made a choice in revealing those parts of me. It could have been shot in a very different way, and it could have been a very different film. So it was the lens that they did it in that made it what it was. So, and also with Killing Eve, I think that's a really great example of that too. It's, the cinematography is so strong, and definitely it's irreverent in that way too, because it leans into the peculiar, odd nature of Villanelle, and also and how Jodie brings that to life. Like a lot of Dutch angles, a lot of Jodie in the foreground, and a kind of distorted background. I don't know, I just think it I really enjoy that type of cinematography as well.
Yeah. And the looks to camera was something that, I was saying with Eliza, we talked about it quite a lot, and I wanted them to be really subtle at first, so that you were going, hold on, did she just look at me? But also because I wanted them to build as her little inner excitement that she couldn't share with anyone else, such as when she first kisses Moses and she does a, ooh, did you see that kind of look?
Yes, it's lovely.
And they build so that then by the time it gets to what the dead said to Miller, that moment where she looks at us is incredibly profound, and you can see her strength and her transition into understanding in a spiritual way where her life is going. And so it was about building up to that. And I love breaking the fourth wall, which we do with also the edit and music and titles, but because I think it hands over to the audience an ability to intellectualize as well as emotionally be invested. And also because I think the relationship between the characters and the audience is really quite special, and it's wonderful if you can bridge that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's interesting to me. I'm going to go to a couple of questions that have come in that actually follow on kind of nicely from this as well, but just sort of observing, just thinking about because you acted as well, Shannon, right? So you have the actor-director sensibility, and Eliza, for Little Women as well. Greta Gerwig obviously comes from acting into directing. There's some interesting, multi-hyphenates, I think, at work in the industry today. Sarah has a question for Eliza. Did you have to shave your head for the role? And if so, what was that experience like?
I did have to shave my hair for the role, and it was something that I was a little worried about at first, simply because when you shave your hair, it's a little bit harder to audition and land roles. And at that point in my career, I had just completed Little Women, and I was going straight on to Babyteeth, and there was going to be quite some time before Little Women came out, and I was hoping that would make it a little bit easier to land roles. But that's a good chunk of time where I'm, that I could have not gotten any kind of role just because I don't have hair. And that's a crazy thing to consider, but to be honest, a lot of powerful people in this industry, I don't think have a lot of imagination, unfortunately, when it comes to casting people. So when they see a girl with no hair, they're like, no, she's not it. But thankfully it was, I got a few roles, and it was a really great experience. And I think it very heavily informed how I approached Miller as a character, because I had to live with Miller for quite some time, and I couldn't really just leave it at set. I came home with it, and just being in public, I was seen differently. And at first I thought I was going crazy, but yeah, it was definitely clear that people saw my head and they thought I was ill. It wasn't just a buzz cut, it was like to the scalp. So there was one occasion where I went to see a play, and after coming out of the bathroom, an elderly woman, like patted my shoulder sympathetically. And then I went to a concert a weekend later, and there were people, when I got out of the venue, my friend told me that people were pointing at me in the audience. And it was just this, I'm not sure why they were pointing and what they were talking about, but just this weird, undeserved sympathy that I was receiving. At first I found it really, really uncomfortable, but then I kind of decided to put that into the character. And yeah, it was a really wonderful experience, actually.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And then we have another question asking from an anonymous, someone who hasn't given us their name. Can you explain the relationship of the two young boys near the end at the dinner party scene? Sorry, what their relationship are to Eliza Scanlen's character? The relationship of the two young boys near the end to Eliza's character.
Yeah. So with the two young boys, Chinua and Moses's younger brother, what often really does happen to children who are terminally ill is that their world really sort of cocoons down to just the essential people in their life. And often they're feeling a bit isolated from their school friends because they've become labeled as the sick kid. And so in many ways, we just wanted to distill it down to the people that Miller felt were important to her in that moment. And for her, it was really important that Moses and his younger brother connect, and that he repairs that relationship. And also because Gideon has been such a teacher of the world to her in many ways. He's gifted her with knowledge and insights that her parents haven't given her over her years growing up. And he has formed this bond with the boy next door, and you know, he sort of takes in strays, Gideon, in many ways, and so he brings him, and I imagine it's as well so that the two boys can have someone to play with at the party. And it's like it's her core family in many ways there. So yeah.
Cool, thank you. And I'm going to just give you one last question, unless there are other questions from the audience, which please feel free just to add them into the Q&A box. But I'm just wondering if each of you just could talk a little bit about music and this film. Eliza, I hear that you learned to play the violin for the film. Is that true?
Kind of. Half learned how to play the violin. So there was a song in the film that I learnt, but we took all the resin off of the bow. So when I played, no sound came out. So we played it over music that had been done by a professional violinist, and I just had to learn the fingering for the song.
Yeah.
Which was very difficult.
Which is really hard to do.
Right.
It was very hard. So yeah, I can't say that I can play the violin, because if put the resin back on, it would be terrible.
And for both of you, I mean, Shannon, you referenced music in the film. Obviously, it's a very important part of the film. And I feel, I came away from it remembering that sometimes people will use music as a way of sort of like underscoring an emotion. You do not do that. So talk a little bit about your relationship to music in the film. Eliza, I'd love you to chime in too, about the choices of it, what you were going for with it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, I feel ripped off when I watch stories and the music has sort of told me what to feel. So I try to pick music that does, of course, enhance the scene, but often is sometimes at odds with the emotion or is offering new information in some way. And with the music in the film, we knew that Miller comes from this wonderfully classical world of music, with her mother being a concert pianist, and then also the world music that Gideon opens her up to. And sorry, my daughter is just coming through. Do you need to go to the bathroom? No. And then also then what Miller would be listening to in her life, and what she's inspired by from Moses and what he's offering to her. So it was a very eclectic mix of music. And also I wanted to make sure it was a soundtrack that everybody could love, but wouldn't necessarily reference lots of moments in their own life. I wanted it to feel completely original to this world. Eliza, what do you want to say?
When I saw the film for the first time, I was really taken aback by the music selection, and it almost felt like an extension of Miller and an extension of the film itself. And to me, Babyteeth it's kind of multidisciplinary in a way. I just feel like the music is its own entity, and then the film is its own entity, and then the characters are their own entity as well. It's just, and you're a fly on the wall in the whole process. And yeah, Shannon's totally right. The soundtrack, while it doesn't tell you how to feel, I think every song is so life affirming, and every song could make you cry. And it's just a wonderful accompaniment for the film in that way. And yeah, there was this, when we were at Venice Film Festival, one of the songs, so when we came out of the car to do the red carpet, one of the songs from the film started playing. I think it's called Santiana, and it was performed by a public school choir in Sydney, is that right?
Malabar Public, yeah.
Malabar Public. And we were all trying to keep it together, because it's just such a, I'm not sure if I don't think it's an incredibly heart-wrenching song in itself, but to us it was just so emotional, and to me that just really affirmed how connected we all felt to the story. But yeah, just a wonderful selection of music.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions from Paul. That was one heck of a family dynamic in the movie. Did it come out pretty much the way it was written in the script, or did it develop in a different direction during shooting?
I think we had rehearsals, and we went over a lot of those family scenes in rehearsals, and we fleshed it out then. But I think every person brings their own flair to a character, and Shannon really embraced that. At least for me, I remember even in the audition, Shannon, she took me out of the room. She was like, she said it really nicely, but in other words, it was like, stop acting so weird and just be yourself. And I was and I knew I was doing this feigned kind of quirky character and trying to be what I thought was Miller in a kind of 500 Days of Summer version. And I quickly realized that that's not what she wanted. And there's a reason why she chose the actors, because she wanted to bring their natural energy to the characters. So yeah, I don't think it changed too much. What about you, Shani?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, it was very strong on the page, but then what everyone could offer was their natural sense of humor. And, I love working with actors that are loose cannons, and everyone in this family was, and all these actors were. And so it just made it very playful on set, and people could have the freedom to just bring so much of themselves and their ideas to the table. Sorry, my child's just like creeping around.
Hi, Dylan. See, Eliza said hi.
You should bring her up so that Eliza can say hi.
No, I'm trying to. Come on, Eliza wants to speak. She'll come up eventually.
Okay. I'm gonna I have 2 more questions up here, and I'm going to ask the second one first, because the other one I think is a good moment for us to end on. From Dan Nishimura, what is the name of the song that the mother and daughter play together?
That was composed by Amanda Brown, who was our composer on the film. Gosh, you know what? I actually can't remember what we called that. What was it?
Into the Sea?
I think it was Into the Sea. Yeah, that is exactly what it was. Good one, Eliza.
Is there a soundtrack album?
There isn't. I actually mean to talk to Amanda about trying to put it on Spotify or something. Some people have made Spotify playlists for Babyteeth, but sadly the composed music, which is the song at the end of the film, and also that one, they're not on there just yet. But it would be nice if people could hear them, because they're so excellent.
Yeah. Yes. So the final response is from Daniel Sonkin, who says, "Hi, this is Mindy and Daniel from NorCal. We loved, capitals, we loved your film. We are so grateful that you both made yourself available to us to hear about your perspective. Thank you so much to Zoe, thank you, Mark, and the entire CFI staff for keeping us entertained, thinking, crying, and laughing during this difficult time." And obviously the entertainment, the thinking, crying, and laughing are very, very pertinent to Babyteeth. And I personally thank you so much for your great work. And I look forward to seeing your short film, Eliza, Mukbang, right?
Yes.
And, I wish you the best as this opens here in America online. And maybe in some drive-ins, if IFC has anything to do with it.
Yeah, I know drive-ins. I love that drive-ins are coming back.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's for you, Eliza.